$50 in my pocket. I had a university course I had to start in 2 weeks and rent already due. And I was like, it's going to work out.
That is fascinating because there's so many people in that position that would not have the it's going to work out. What do you think that is? Welcome to the Mikey G podcast experience. What up, folks? Tess, I knew you didn't know that I was going to do that ridiculous intro, but
that's amazing.
To the Mikey G podcast. I've been doing that since day one, and it gets people to smile right off the bat. That's why I do it. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And we were just talking about, it's funny how the world brings people together. You commented on a post of Jay, who just was on the podcast. We had a fascinating conversation. We're about to have a fascinating conversation. And I was just super excited to have you here. So before we get into the meat of the show, updates about myself, I was telling you as well, too, my buddy Adam, who was on this podcast a year and a half ago, randomly called me up and he was like, I built something crazy and exciting. And he built a AI system that actually governs. And I've been working with him on like go-to-market and marketing. I think I've came to the catch line, which is he has literally built an anti-hallucination system. And AI agents hallucinating is a really big deal. He's solved that problem, which I don't think anybody has really solved. So that's
Australian too, right? So that's cool.
Yeah. And it's a whole governance system. And it tracks all of the decisions the AI is making. It tracks if it's trying to be nefarious, all these different things. So I've been helping with him on that. We actually started a second podcast. Tess, going to invite you on that one as well, too. AI-driven podcast. You already have an open invitation. We talk about safety, AI, and governance. And we talk about current events, but then we also like to get people on that are building in the AI field too, to just get their opinions and have an open discussion about what's going on. What are you excited about? What are your pain points? And what is concerning to you? I think everybody's concerned about how quick it's going. And again, like we were talking before we came online, we already got brain chips going into people's heads. This stuff is, here's a quick question, going off the rails a little bit. I think everyone says yes to this. For me, I think where we are right now in 2026, I thought would happen at like end of 2027, 2028. Like, is it moving faster than you anticipated?
Yes, I think it is. And
what's your reason why?
Why do I think it's moving as fast as it is?
Like what is something that you were like, wow, I can't believe that's happening already?
I guess for me, a big wake-up call was probably 18 months ago when I started to get more involved in AI and just sort of understanding the level of ingestion of data that it can handle and the automation around that. And when you start to think of that in the construct of processes that we've lived, legacy processes that we've lived with for a very long time that have governed the way, and I'm thinking from a work standpoint. And then you start to think about that from a completely different angle. It sort of breaks down every type of construct that you've has been mainstream for decades now. And so I think when all of that changes as quickly as it has this kind of accelerated effect on all sorts of areas. So I think
the pattern, like to your said, massive amounts of data in, pattern recognition out, and the crazy stuff is going to happen is when it becomes that, certified expert, which you could argue it already is in some verticals. But when it becomes the expert, human-like or better in all verticals, and then starts pattern recognizing. I listened to this podcast, Moonshots, and one of the ways they explain is, I think a great way to explain it is, imagine in every human vertical known, you have an Albert Einstein. level person. And then those Albert Einsteins got together and then created new novel things. Like the human brain just can't even wrap their head around what the output is going to be. And we're a decade or less away from that, which is like my son's 2, right?
I know.
Like,
I've got young kids.
He's not even going to be high school level before the world has fundamentally changed.
I think I was talking about this today with a friend. I think what is the big shift for me as I look at my work and what I've been focused on for the last 20 years is that AI has democratized knowledge, right? And so when we think about the democratized knowledge, it's changed the whole knowledge economy, which is basically how we do what we do, why we do it.
Yep.
The education system. I mean, I've had a conversation with friends, my husband. Are our kids going to university? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm not. I don't think. I think it could still exist, and it's a social reasoning.
Exactly.
I think in-person social things will be some of the most lucrative businesses that you can build.
I can imagine instead of going to I don't know, let's think about something that's digital. People pay so much money to go and see a play on stage. Can you imagine?
Correct.
It'll be where the
100%. Concerts, all of those things. So I think a version of university, because I know I went to a large state school in the States called Penn State, 40,000 plus kids. Like that social experiment for 4 years was amazing. Right? And so like there's something to be said for that, right? And I also do think now here in America things are changing, but I do think that universities and research are an important part, right? The University of California, for instance, like the CRISPR technology, literally the DNA, replicator came out of the university. So like there's something to be said about research, innovation, and new ideas with universities as well too. But yes, it will fundamentally change, especially in a decade. Yeah. See, we're already having a beautiful conversation and we haven't even got to the main question. This is fantastic.
Look at
Okay, so helping my buddy with that. We've got the new podcast. And then we have another little messaging app that we're working on, slower burn, but for people that are at conferences and we're just trying to solve a very small pain point, which is you don't remember conference and you're like, I just met 1,000 awesome people and I have 3 names. And everyone has a CRM, but guess who's not logging into Salesforce during a conference? Anybody. So how can we help on your messaging app, WhatsApp, Telegram, just create a quick AI automated bot that downloads the details of the people and puts it into a CSV file? Literally, that's it. Just a simple solution to that. $10 a month or whatever we may charge, but we got to get that working. Enough about me. The rest is about Tess. And I'm really excited for this beautiful conversation. To get there, we always do a quick little intro. So she has been in psychology, talent, and technology. She's at kind of the merging of all of these things, which is fascinating to me. This is why I get so excited about these conversations, because these convergence of technologies in so many different fields, like we talked about, is super, super interesting. 20 plus years of talent strategy, and she's building in the AI and tech space. But this is the most important part. Most people do not know Tess has been writing a novel for a long time. She might write it for the rest of her life. She might be doing it just for herself. How did I do on your intro? Anything you want to add, or did I nail it?
Yeah, that novel's my world's biggest secret, I guess. But
yes.
I would say I was mentally writing that novel for about 35 years and actually trying to write it for the last 5. I won't give away my full age. Actually, that was definitely the wrong numbers. But yes, no, that's perfect. Exactly.
Oh, beautiful. All right. So with that being said, Tess, the world famous Mikey G podcast experience question: how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me chapter 1, 2, and 3 to reiterate for the audience that will listen to this in the future. And by the way, I always still like to prompt and comment too. People that are listening on Spotify or Apple or Amazon Music, wherever you're listening to this, please comment. I will listen and read every single comments. Helps me become a better podcaster and a human being. So please do that. So chapter 1, Tess, is your childhood. Prompting questions here would be parents, parental figures were their mantras: be kind, work hard, pay it forward. Vivid memory: were you a tinkerer? Did you play sports? Start anywhere you want. That will begin that organic conversation. Chapter 2 for the audience will be Tess's education, professional career that we just talked about. But here again, we're really looking for the big insights, the aha moments, because not only are we doing self-discovery and just telling a beautiful human story, we're helping people out, right? Like I said before we came on here, my favorite thing that we do here is we're actually not podcasting. We're helping change a life. We will change one life because of this conversation. And those insights are super meaningful and important. Chapter 3 is the beautiful company that you're building right now. What is it? What are you excited about? What does the future look like? And then we'll wrap it up for the day. So let's have at it, Tess. Anywhere in your childhood, where do you want to start?
So I grew up on a sheep farm in the south of Australia, in Tasmania. So I don't know if you're familiar with Tasmania. A lot of
I've
people go to
heard of
Australia.
Tasmania, but I'm not familiar with it. Paint me a little bit of a picture.
Well, it's the island down the very bottom of Australia. Not tropical at all. Very cold. So this is a bit of a myth for people who haven't travelled around Australia. When you get to the south of Australia, it's kind of like being in the northern hemisphere, if you like, in terms of, Nordics or whatever. So it's cold. It's but it's a
It
beautiful.
looks beautiful, though.
It is. It is absolutely beautiful in terms of very natural. It's not huge, 500,000 people. It's a lot of farmland. It's a lot of hiking, beautiful beaches, very
Ooh.
natural. Yeah.
So would you say would you say that the childhood was very outdoorsy, kind of removed from tech, or what did that look like?
For sure. I mean, I grew up. I was on the farm, and I remember my after school hobbies were things like I'd run to the neighbour's house through the paddocks, and we would go on four-wheeler motorbikes, and we'd get in loads of trouble because we used to we'd tie a chain and a tyre to the back of the four-wheel motorbike and just kind of drive around the paddock. So that was kind of the afternoon fun.
I mean, this comes up all the time. This is literally probably the beginning of many conversations, especially people that experience outdoors. And I'm in your same generation, right? So I grew up with, I'm in my, like I was 80s kid, really 90s kid. So what I'm getting at is I saw life before technology. And
For
you
sure. And
obviously have too. I think we're one of the coolest generations in the world because we've seen this full evolution. Life without technology, and now we're talking about microchips and brains and robots. Like, this is insane.
And we straddle that, right?
Yeah, we're the most privileged generation ever to be existing, I think. And so talk to me about that, this sphere of play and influence and creativity, like your experience. How do you think that impacted you on your thought process, your psyche, how you are as a human?
Yeah, it's hard because you can't sort of parallel. I mean, I can parallel it to the life that my kids are having, which is vastly different, obviously.
Let's hear that. I don't think I've ever had anybody on the podcast parallel kids in that. Yeah, let's hear it.
No, I mean, it's just a different environment, to your point. There's so much technology. I think about this all the time in terms of, growing up as a 80s, 90s kid, you had to read the newspaper to see what movies are on for the weekend. You had to wait and watch the movie. You had to time yourself if you wanted to go to the bathroom and make it back from, the advert break. Everything was, there was no immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the kids growing up now, for right or wrong, if they want to listen to a song, if they want to see something on the TV, just whatever you can dream of, it's immediacy. And I draw a parallel again from that experience that they're having to the experience that we're seeing playing out in the world of work. And I think that's what pivoting people into things that are more purpose driven, more, what do I want? What's the experience of this? as opposed to maybe what we've seen decades before.
Mm.
Anyway, but that's jumping so many.
No. That's fine. Like again, I think we do tangents.
Yeah.
We're defined because of is an interesting topic. One thing that's interesting to me though is one thing I've experienced, and I love your thoughts on this, is I think because of somebody like you that has a childhood of had this chance to play, the creativity and problem solving is something I think is way higher than maybe some of the younger generation people I've had to deal with in a corporate environment. What are your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts there? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is
Yeah,
there
I
a
guess
reason
so.
for
I
that?
mean, if you think about anything that you hear about from a, say, a child psychologist or people who podcast or write about that, they talk about the importance of play, role
Uh-huh.
playing with kids, reading books, drawing, crafting, because it means that you're independently drawing things in your mind, you're
Yep.
creating, you're
Yep.
making connections that aren't being made for you. And so for sure, I mean, and growing up on a farm, just getting back to that, I mean, I eventually went to boarding school and had lots of people around me, but when I was on the farm, it was quite, we had sort of some families around us, but it was quite isolating to a point. So I had to create stories and games and little adventures for myself around the farm, which
Mhm.
was a great experience.
Right.
But that's for sure a vivid memory of mine growing up. And I can't imagine that happening so much for my kids in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No, see, this is all, see, we could stop here. You've already given me just some beautiful insights. So talk to me about if you're open, like what were those kind of lessons learned from your family environment as well too? I mean, obviously I'm assuming growing up on a farm by default, whether they physically said it, like hard work was just part of your life. Like you had to do things, or maybe not. I don't know. What did that look like? Like what were the lessons that you were being taught? What were the things and insights that you were starting to learn as we start progressing?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure hard. I mean, my dad didn't have a 9 to 5 job. He had a 24/7 job.
Correct.
So I didn't grow up in a sort of environment where you would go to work, come back from work. My mum was mostly, when I was growing up, looking after us and being on the farm.
Hmm.
And so, but growing up on the farm, and I guess I haven't really thought about it this way before, is we really were at the mercy of the work that we were doing. So if it was a good year in terms of the sheep, in terms of the crops, we'd
Correct.
go on holidays. If it wasn't a good year, we probably couldn't go anywhere. And a holiday for us was not on a plane somewhere. It was driving to the coast of Tasmania or,
Right.
something
Right.
similar. Yeah, so it was pretty much embedded. And I was actually laughing the other day because someone asked me what my first job was in life.
Yeah.
And I realized I was about, I don't know if you can class this as a job, but I was 8 and I wanted to buy a stereo because we didn't have a stereo for our
Mhm.
family. And it was one of those amazing stereos that was stacked, with like the
Yeah,
5 CD
yeah,
deck. I
yeah.
think it had a vinyl player, like a record player at the top,
That's amazing.
radio cassettes. And I found it it's like a scene out of a movie. I found it in like a magazine and I put a big circle and I ripped it out and I put it on the fridge. And basically I bagged sheep manure. I bagged 1,000 bags
Oh
and
my
I sold them
lord.
for $1 each. And I bought that stereo. It
That's
lived in our
amazing.
living room for like, I mean, things used to last forever, right? I think it lasted like 15 years.
Uh-huh,
But that
uh-huh.
was my first job. So I had to
You're
live every
literally
dollar.
shoveling shit, which is amazing. But here's what I heard you say. This is what I heard you say, and I think this is a fascinating topic. In essence, there was a reward at the end of whatever action you did. And even more, the stakes of rewards even more for your family. If family outputted X, vacation happened. What's the thought process about that kind of reward driven loop ecosystem? Do you have any thoughts there? I just think that's interesting because I haven't heard anybody describe it. And you even said it yourself. You're like, I never really have thought about it this way, that like the more we output, we got to go on vacation and stuff. I just think that's an interesting concept.
Well, I think it is human behavior, isn't it? Like if you think about trying to motivate yourself or trying to get to the end of something and creating new habits, and even if there are small things that you want to change, the best mechanism is to create some rewards for yourself. And I don't think we're very good at doing that necessarily. But the
Tell
psychology
me a
around,
little bit about that, though. That's an interesting tangent. Why do you think we're not good at that?
I don't know. I think it's a bit like, why do we set these intentions on the 1st of January and not see them through? And I think we just, I don't want to get
Yeah.
it. I don't do New Year's resolutions, by the way.
No. But that's a great example.
I think we don't put the discipline around it necessarily because it feels boring to do that. But actually, it's those small changes that you can make and the small rewards that you can give yourself along the way that can get you to exponentially to a better place. Like I often think about marginal gains and that whole concept in sport, right? So where they discovered, it was, I guess, sometime in the 90s, making 1% kind of change along a number of different things would create exponential performance acceleration. So
interesting.
I think those principles carry into, the way that we behave as humans.
Yeah. But see what we're doing here already is I got beautiful insight into you that like you're just kind of in these reward driven systems at a very young age. And it was like, and I think it's fascinating to me about how people's stories evolve now, knowing that that was just an inherent part of you. And then it changes your mindset. Your mindset's totally different from the last guest that has come on. It's already been totally different. So talk to me a little bit about we're starting to evolve. I've got a vivid kind of, I've already got a picture. I brought up Tasmania. The pictures are absolutely gorgeous. I don't know what this is. But it's like a crescent moon beach, and there's a lot of pictures of it.
Oh, it's Wineglass Bay. It's beautiful. You can't get there by car. You have to walk there or go by boat. It's amazing.
Holy hell. That looks incredible.
That's on the East Coast. Right near where we used to have our family holidays if we had a good year.
Yeah, if we had a good year. Fantastic. So talk to me now a little bit about what you're starting to get passionate and interest about. We can start moving forward a little bit here, but like you're starting to grow up and you're starting to be like, okay, I don't think shoveling poo is cool because it got me a CD player, but maybe I don't want to do this for the rest of my life.
Maybe I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Yeah. So at the age of 11, I went to boarding school, which might sound terrifying to people. And I know many people use it as a threat for their kids. I loved it. I was so excited. It was just the thing that my entire family did. It was like not a tradition, but it's just what our family did.
Right.
From my dad's side. So all of his siblings, their kids, we all went to boarding school because we all lived outside on farms and we couldn't have the opportunities that we would have unless we went to boarding school.
Right. So, makes total sense.
Yeah.
And what did you love about it? Thinking about it, reminiscing, looking back, like what was it? Well,
I wasn't scared about it because my siblings had been, my brother and sister had already gone ahead of me. And I was one of the very few people who got there and wasn't crying and wasn't homesick. And I guess that's just part of who I am and my experiences in life. And I'm not sure. But it was one giant never-ending sleepover. I mean, these people that I went to boarding school with are like sisters to me. I mean,
that's amazing.
Joined. We did everything together and we lived.
Do you still talk to some of them?
God, yeah. And we had such incredible experience. We were so naughty.
Yeah.
We had some cool stuff. We learned some cool stuff. And I just, we had structure, we had discipline, we had opportunities, we had a library. I mean, we literally lived at the school.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
You know what you said to me that was interesting, that I have never made this connection and gap too, but I just made it, and love your thoughts on this. Is you were one of the few people that were not crying, bawling, and just like falling apart, which is, it was like you said, it was family tradition, and it was looked as like maybe tradition, honor, an exciting thing. And it wasn't, because whenever I hear board school, it's always a negative connotation of like, you are a bad person,
You're
Oh,
being
you
sent
needed to
away
go
to
to board school to get straight or whatever, right? And I think that was it. Maybe that was just the difference. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it was normal. It was normalized. So anything that's normalized for you, I think you don't feel as scared about, right? So it was
Mhm.
normalized for us that we would do that. I mean, the hardest part for me is I left a very farming primary school for those who didn't, and some of my friends did go on to be in boarding school as well. So I had some people coming at the same time, but there were many that didn't. And there was a moment in time before we all sort of were leaving that school that there was a lot of negativity because it was sort of seen as, leaving the
Right,
village and going somewhere fancy and whatever, even though it wasn't like that. But so that was sort of the turning point. And then it was an interesting shift for me because I went from a very local farm-like community to a private boarding school with a lot of people and expectations and sort of things that I were at a different level to where I'd come from. So
right,
that was a
right.
transition point, I would say.
Yeah. It's super fascinating to me that someone, because that's a massive shift. You approached it with excitement and have this just beautiful memory of why it meant meaningful, like deeply meaningful to you, where most people in that situation would have been like, this was a nightmare. That's just super interesting to me. So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about um now you're doing, like you said, you're just being a kid, right? Coming of age, you're doing all the things that most kids do, but you're in this boarding school setting. What are you starting to get interested in? Are you creative? Do you like math? Do you like art? What does that look like?
Don't like maths.
Hate math.
Was always the bad math students, but very creative. So I was always into art. Loved all the humanities. Was very into that. But yeah, and then from a sporting perspective, did a lot of different sports. Actually, it was enforced at the school that we would have to do a summer and winter sport, but I sort of did a few different things. Um, Spent all of my high school years rowing and
Okay.
loved rowing, and did it also again. That was sort of a very um, common sport for people to take up in the school,
Yeah.
but very within the state. It was one of those things where all the schools came together. It was very social. It was very organized. There would be a lot of different regattas through the year, so it was a lot of fun. But I think it taught a lot about. I mean, it was when I look back on it, it was actually pretty insane. We would get up 5 a.m. I think 3 mornings a week to do rowing training, and then on the other days we'd be doing weights and running. And I mean, I'm talking like age of 12 or 13. So it was good. Um, yeah, I mean, all those endorphins you're getting when you're out on the water at 6 a.m. And you get back at 7 a.m. and you've achieved more than probably what most are going to do for the rest of the day. It's pretty cool.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about more of like what you think the learned skills or how that sport really impacted you as your mindset.
I think it's probably the discipline around it in terms of, it's quite tough to it's quite a high intensity experience. There's a lot
Yeah.
of obviously there's a lot of team elements to it, but it sort of toggles between team elements and being able to sort of have that discipline on your own as well. So it was good. It was a fun time.
And so now so now we're progressing. I've got this beautiful picture of you as a human being already. Growing up on the farm, you're going to the boarding school, you're coming of age, you're into sports, you hate math, you're a creative human being.
Hmm.
We're now starting to evolve into like I gotta start figuring out what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
Um,
So
what does that look like?
before that, I was a pretty average student, to be honest.
Okay,
Like I was not. Year seven was the first year I went to boarding school, and that was tough because I had come from a very different environment. But
correct.
even beyond that, I was okay, but I wasn't excelling.
Yeah.
And then at the age of, as I came into year 11, which is I don't know how it all maps out, but that's like the final 2 years of my
Hmm. Hmm.
schooling.
Hmm.
yeah, my whole world kind of came crashing down because my dad died suddenly.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
So it was just you think of that as a 16-year-old, I think I was at the time,
Yeah.
and not expecting it, sort of
Mm-hmm.
still trying to figure out who you are, what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing with your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's when that happens at that point, at that age,
Mm-hmm.
you have to sort of you become about 50 years older suddenly. Like everything feels different. The way that you relate to people is different. The way
Interesting.
that you're grappling with big concepts that you're not
Yes.
supposed to grapple with, right?
You're
At the age of
forced you're
16.
forced with it quicker.
Yeah, you're like, what is this? What is death? You things that I guess as a 16-year-old you might think about, but then you're like smacked in the face with it and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to try and make sense of what's going on here.
Yeah, yeah. You
And
you
so,
you you say something really interesting, and I never thought about this. Now, it's not as bad as a parent passing away, but my parents split up when I was really young, and that just devastated me, right? But I think it's because of the same reason, which is like you're now forced to think quickly in the future of like, well, what does this look like? And this isn't fair or this isn't right. Like you're
right.
grappling with all those same things.
Yeah.
Obviously, yours is more severe, but at the moment in time, it feels like the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
Yeah. I
never
mean, it's
thought about it that way.
things that you wouldn't expect to be working
Yeah.
yourself through. And
Mhm. Mhm.
so, yeah, I felt very disconnected from my social group, from my
Right.
life. And I guess in hindsight, I didn't see it at the time, but I probably just wanted to get away from everything. And so I made this decision that I would, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, this sounds juicy. Um, I, so I made a couple of decisions, which at the time felt very normal for me, but maybe it was not. But I was also feeling like a very different person. So I went to see a
Right.
psychologist.
Yeah.
I went to see a spiritual counselor because
Yeah.
I was understand all elements of what was going on. And I
Interesting.
made a decision that I would get into a university because I'd already seen one that had this very specific degree, which
Yeah.
would I was not, in terms of the grades that I had and the path I'd taken, I'd have to work a lot harder to make sure I could get into it. And I just spent that year pretty much focused on getting the right sort of help around me and securing myself in that way and studying as hard as I could to make sure I could get into that degree and to get off the island, go to the mainland, as we called it, and
Mhm.
reinvent myself. And and I did.
And it's totally, totally makes sense. And I think that's just super profound to me. Like like you're making me think about all of the different things as to why I did. And the thing that you said made the most sense to me is you just wanted to get away.
I
I
just
think
wanted to
that's just
run
like
away.
a natural thing our brains. Like if you can't wrap your head around what's going on, I've been through this many times in my life. The easiest thing to do is just retreat. And fortunately, well, and me, uh, like I think the people that make the bad decisions, they retreat into some type of vice as well too, right? And so, um, there's just beautiful insight. I don't have anything much to say about that other than like that was profound.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, okay, so you decide to go this direction. What are you learning now? What are you starting to become? What are you starting to think?
So I mean, I was so focused. I sort of disconnected myself socially a little bit. I had
Mhm,
some very close friends that I felt still very connected to, and
mhm,
so, but was just hyper focused on study and I spent a lot of, and I didn't really know about this concept. I'm not trying to sound sort of profound in any way, but I remember every night I would go to bed listening to my Walkman because I had a
mm.
Walkman.
Yes, yes, I did too. Discman, Walkman turned into a Discman, right?
Right, right. I can't even remember when the what was the not AirPods. What was the first thing that came out?
AirPods. I want to say AirPods. Yeah,
Anyway,
I know it's I
iPod.
iPod. There it is.
but yeah, I just remember every night kind of visualizing this new life of that I was going to have, and I was going to, just very specific sort of um like a movie reel of this is what it's going to look like when I can get out of here and I can go over there and I can work and I can, be my own
Interesting.
person. Oh,
And you weren't reading like you weren't reading this is what you should do. This was just
no,
kind of like a natural thing that your brain
yeah.
did.
And
Yeah.
so I guess as I got older, I was like, well, that's probably classic kind of manifestation.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that. I just
Right.
wanted to listen to my music and I wanted to get out of my life. And so naturally those two things came together and all I did was listen to music and visualize what this new thing would be. And then it was years later, I kind of looked back and went, I did all of that and I am doing this now. So it was a weird moment for me when that whole concept became so on trend. And I was like, I totally get this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was much later I pieced that together. So,
It but it's so and then I think I think if you visualize, talk to me a little bit about the benefits in your mind because I think the easy response and explanation is if I visualize X, you eventually get that. But I feel like other things, there's other benefits. Like, so in your experience, that visualization, um, what else do you think that did for you?
well, it keeps you on track, doesn't it? So even when
Right.
things get tough, when they
Yeah.
don't feel comfortable or they don't feel fun,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I think even subconsciously it keeps you on track for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it like this is like the one of the multiple times, like through boarding school, we're talking about shoveling poo for money. Like you've made multiple comments of what I think people would have had TED Talks about, which is called grit, right? Like how do you how do you persist through the bad times and how do you stay on track? And this is like a repeated pattern of your life, which is super fascinating to me because a lot of uh, I think a lot of people subconsciously go through that maybe, but you've had some things that are like just experiences that you had no other choice but to learn that gritty pattern, which is just that's just a comment and an interesting insight to me. Okay, so you're listening to music, you're visualizing,
Yeah.
you're going through.
Yeah.
This is beautiful, by the way. I told you we were going to go on a little journey. How are you feeling? You feeling good about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like we need to we've what age are we now? I think I'm 17 now, so
Yeah.
we're getting
Yeah, we're
there.
getting into chapter 2. We're
But
getting
yeah,
into
so
chapter 2.
speed it up from there. I got into that degree. I left. I am very blessed. My mum is someone who is will support me on any journey I want to go on,
That's
and I think
amazing.
that's been hugely important for me. I've never felt held back, and I've seen my friends sort of go through that a little bit with their families, so hugely important. But I had no financial support from, everything. Losing my dad, it was very difficult financially for all of us and for the family.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I just remember getting on this boat. There's a boat from Tasmania to Victoria, and that's where I was going to study. Takes all night. It's horrible. Don't do it. It's the roughest strait in the world, and it's just a terrible, terrible experience. Anyway, it's what we had to do because we were taking a car. And I just remember I was moving in with a friend. Her family had bought an apartment, so I was very lucky that I actually had a room to go into, but I had rent to pay. I was like, it's going to work out. So yeah, I mean,
That
to
is fascinating. What do you think God, because there's so many people in that position that would not have the it's gonna work out. What do you think that is?
I just always felt like if you don't step forward, like
Mm,
if you don't take the shots, then you'll never know, right? So I always felt if it doesn't work, then I'll go back home. That is the worst case scenario, right? I'm not going to die. I'm not going to hurt anyone. It's just on me. So if I can't make this work, I'll go home. But I'm not going to not do it.
this brings up that's a beautiful insight, but it also made me think of it. It brings up to the other concept, and I want your opinion on this. I've had many people talk about this, but it comes back to you could just go back home. Some people don't have that option, right? So, how important is that sense of family, love, support going? You mentioned your mom has always supported you. Is that like the ultimate thing that allows you to do the things that you have done up into your life at that point? Is it just that constant love and support or feeling safe? What is it there for you? What are your
I
thoughts?
think at that point it was, right? It was, I could go home, and home could be many things to different people, right? So it's
Correct.
whatever your base point is
Correct.
maybe a better reference than home. Um, but the interesting part was once I did that and I moved and I went door knocking and on every restaurant down multiple streets, and someone said yes, and I got a job, and I, you know, paid my rent and did my degree. Um, yeah, I felt at that point that I'd proven out to myself that if I put my mind to it, I can make it work. So this whole
Mm,
concept of going home sort of disappeared, and it
mm,
got replaced with, no, I can do this. I can figure it out. I've done it before.
yeah,
So let's do it again.
beautiful, beautiful. So you're doing it now. You're knocking on doors. Take me through a little bit of this journey of you're completely independent at this point, right? Um, what's driving you? What is exciting you? And then I think we're getting into more kind of chapter two. You're picking your studies. You're eventually going to start working. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I got to Melbourne, and yeah, I just remember there was probably a week where I literally just walked down restaurant streets and I just knocked on doors and said, "Can you give me a job?"
Like that was the
and
act. It wasn't like I'll do X. It's like I just need money. I need. Can you give me work?
and do you know what? It was like restaurant number 37 or something, and I will never forget the guy's face when he said, "Yeah, okay, let's give it a go." I was like, "What?"
Wait, you said yes after 36 no's?
And
Oh.
my mum will tell you the story. I wrote her an email and I went, "Oh my gosh, I have a job. It's at a restaurant in this street. I have an apron. I have a waiter's friend." I don't know if you know what that is, Mum. That is a, it was like, I was so excited. I was so proud of that job.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I worked, I had a few different restaurant jobs, but on average, I was working, I mean, it was insane in hindsight, but I was working something like, I think it was about 40 hours a week waitressing, and then my studies were on top. So I was sort of, I don't know,
Oh, you're
somehow.
bouncing on just yet another grit instance in the life of Tess. It's
Well,
unbelievable.
would I recommend that to anyone? I look back on it and go, I don't think I did that whole party thing. I don't think I did that, like, oh, I got it all
Yeah,
out of me. Not that it's in my system, but I can't do life like I did in my 20s. I was just working all the time. It was
correct.
mad.
Right.
And I definitely don't want to paint a picture of that's what you need to do to like come and be this kind of person in the future. I don't, it's just what I had to do, because if I couldn't do that, I couldn't study.
Correct. And yeah, I don't think you are at all. Again, we're here telling your story, your instance, but there is something to be said about your experience and what that produces as a mindset. And I think that's already starting to become pretty clear, which is that grit and determination. You did bring up one thing too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have thoughts on this, but
Mm.
I've always said, because one of my first jobs was in the restaurant industry. So I actually worked drive through at Taco Bell. I'm not sure if you've ever been to Taco Bell, but it's not the
No,
greatest food
one.
in the world. Yes. It's fast food, crappy
Yeah,
Mexican.
yeah.
Um, but I always say this. I think all youth of the world should go through some type of service restaurant job when they're young, because I have some thoughts. Do you agree? And why do you think they should do that?
Yeah, I don't know if you're saying services versus something else. I think being able
I
to.
think every kid should be a restaurant like server or waiter of some sort. I'm not talking about cook. I'm talking about you are interacting with people
Mm,
and that is your job.
yeah, I think there's something humbling about it. I think it teaches you good discipline. Um, I think there's an element of it that shows that you put in and you receive back, and
Yep.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
And I think why I always say that and to go forward is it's just you're forced to meet new people every 10 minutes, let's say, whatever it may be. And I think it just gives you perspective on humans in general. And I think that's super profound when you're young. And I don't think a lot of people have that because you deal with great people and you deal with really nasty people and you deal with middle of the road people. But to be good at what you do, it is your job to still put the smile on the face no matter what has happened to you. And I think there's something to be said about being in that environment.
yeah, yeah. You build a level of resilience as well. I think
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about it that way, but it is a bit of a social experiment too, right? See
100%.
you see a lot, you experience a lot, you have to deal with a lot, you have to smile through a lot. Um, yeah, interesting.
Mile through the lot. And I remember vividly thinking it was this is one of the first moments I had because of that situation is, um, I felt like crap, wasn't happy, didn't want to do any of this stuff, but my job was to act happy and interact. And it
Hmm.
was the first like aha, like, oh, I kind of have to do this, even though I don't want to do it. And I
Yeah.
think that there's something super important about that. But you've already built that resilience in many other different ways. Okay, so let's take us forward a little bit. I'm really interested in now why you picked your like first kind of whether you call it corporate job or your career, right? Why did you decide that ultimately? I think you touched on it a little bit as like when you were running away and you wanted to go to university and you did the counselors. But why did you really pick that? And then let's take me a little chronologically through what that career looks like.
So yeah, I remember the first day that I started in my psychology degree because I was so convinced that I would be a therapist because of all the help that I had when I was a 17-year-old. I was very committed to the idea that I would help other people in terms of just being able to get to the other side of whatever they were going through. Um, and on that first day, I remember the head of department said something like, "Who here is going to be a therapist when they leave this degree?" And like 98% of us put our hands up. And he said, "Well, the reality is only 20% of you are going to do that." And I was like,
Mm.
"Well, that's not me. I'm definitely doing that." And anyway, I mean, interestingly, and much to the terror, my mum was concerned, but I got to my third year of university and I decided to defer it, which was very taboo, right? It's not what people do, but I was exhausted from all of the waitressing, studying, and I decided to take a year off, work even more, save more money so I could go back and really make sure I could do my third year well. And I think there was a genuine concern that I wouldn't make it back. But I
Mm.
did. I went and finished it. And then I'll never forget, I was so excited to do my first internship, like a real sort of live example of in a therapy situation. And I went for a week and I was sitting in on sessions. And I just remember getting to the end of that week going, no, this is not it. This is not what I'm on this planet to do. I still want to be able to do this type of work of unlocking potential in people, but I need to do this at scale and I need to do this in the workforce. So I switched to occupational psychology.
Interesting. So talk to me about that scale. Was it just about repetition experience? Like what was your thought there?
Well, it was just the recognition, I guess, of the pace at which change happens for people in therapy, right? This is not something that you you go for months. It might be weeks, but usually it'd be months that you go into these type of scenarios. You're working through. You're hoping that it's obvious of the change and that there is progress, etc. And I'm not disregarding that work is super. My sister's been a clinical psychologist for 20 years. I mean, it's
Yeah.
super important work.
Yeah.
But I wanted a different level of immediacy of it. And I think losing my father at the age I did made me very cognizant of the fact that our moments in life are finite, right? And we don't know when they're up. We've only, we have moments and we use them and we can't get them back and we don't know when it's over, right? So I think about the world of work, and I was thinking about it at the time going, we spend so much time at work. It should be meaningful. It should be purposeful.
Right.
So that's why I switched into occupational psychology, to be able to match people into the work that would bring them the most meaning, where they could perform the best. So that was my first job.
Ah, beautiful insight. Take me through this. Take me through this occupational psychology journey now.
Yeah. So it lasted a few years. I mean, in essence, what I did, probably 5 years, I was very focused in that space. And it was essentially, we would consult out to organizations who were looking to understand who to place in their open positions. And we would do an assessment, a psychology assessment. And they could be anything from something very basic online to an actual sort of full day of testing and role playing and all sorts of things. And then we would make an assessment of, the suitability of that person or those people into those roles,
Right.
based on their preferences and based on what their role required. And so there was a little bit more to it, but that was the essence of what I was focused on for the first part of my career.
So I've never heard about this. So was this for any type of role? Because I feel like that, like going through the psychology thing and job roles is not normal.
No, so that's it. I mean, we were a consulting business,
Okay.
so
Okay.
we would do this for our clients. But yeah, I would say, not definitely not every organization is using these types of tools, and they weren't at the time. It was just whoever our clients were at the time, we would be working with in that capacity.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
so you've now gone from like small practice to this occupational. This is where we get to some of the fun parts as well too, which is like, now that we're entering your career and stuff, give me your first kind of like aha moment, or it shouldn't be this way and I'm going to do something different, or this insight uh really helped change my perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the first things I remember, one of the first projects I implemented in my first sort of real job. Um, I came in and I don't know, it felt natural for me to take what was a very manual process and figure out how to put more efficiency around it. So, and this is dating me, but I learnt how to use Access Database. I remember this very specifically. Do you remember Access Database?
Yes.
I learnt how to build in that
Right.
dinosaur, and I
Dinosaur is the right word.
and I took what was a process on a whiteboard and built it into a database. And I just remember that doing that instinctually, it just needed to work better and be more efficient. And I think that was the turning point for me, thinking actually this sort of idea of innovation, of moving things forward, of not working with the status quo. I think that was my first example of feeling in flow when I'm in that mode of how do we make this better?
Mm, feeling in flow. I love the word flow. What does flow mean to you? What does that feeling look like?
It's that moment where you lose track of time. You feel this different energy around you. You have this kind of, or it's almost like your heart rate changes. You're like, this is what I'm here to do. And it doesn't
Ah,
have to be, it's not necessarily this task is what I'm here to do. It's not your mission, it's not your purpose in life, but it's like this moment in time as I'm working something out towards that mission or purpose, whatever that is, where you feel that. and you're like, it's been 2 hours, or that's the flow for me anyway.
No. I love that description. Have you gotten into like the psychology behind that, or like, so there's people that chase this their whole lives. Or you do your work, and if you feel the flow state, you're excited about that? Or have you ever gone deeper into the thought process
Yeah,
behind how to get into flow states?
I haven't. I've read a lot about it. I know there's that book, right? Have you read that, The Flow? And it's
I
a
have read a
guy.
flow state book. It was called Catching Fire.
Okay, there
So
is
it's
literally
about,
one called The Flow, or Flow,
yeah.
something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I was just interested if you ever went down to that. But for you, it was a chasing a goal, meaningful work, or having a goal in mind.
Yeah.
Um, it's a beautiful insight. Again, the insights that you give, I don't have much comment. I just like am excited to hear them. Okay, so let's go on to a little more chronologically, and maybe your next big insight. I think I'm assuming what I'm interested in is there's a lot of you're dealing with employees, you're dealing with work related things. What I am interested, as you tell me your chronological experiences, how are you seeing workplaces evolve? How are you seeing work cultures evolve? That's super interesting to me.
Yeah. Um, so maybe I just before I get to that, because I've got lots of thoughts on that, I I shifted about 5 years into this consulting occupational piece, because what I realized we were doing is we were assessing people, and we'd take our assessment sort of recommendations forward, and the mantra around that was always, well, this is only ever 20% of the story. And the reality is that it's only 20% of the story, because what we were assessing couldn't control for things like, who's your boss going to be and what are they going to be like? What environment are you walking into? There's 100 other things that is not part of that assessment that wasn't within our purview or control, or anyone's control. And so I didn't want to just help the 20% that didn't feel like enough. So I switched into talent acquisition and sort of went on a mission to redefine that whole recruiting space from a corporate standpoint. So I shifted out of occupational psychology and went into corporate recruitment.
Interesting. And that was because yet again, you saw that you could do something better, and that drove you. You saw that you could make the change. What was the base before we get into trying to create that meaningful change? What was the true? Because I think you just talked about it generally that things are broken, but like, what were a couple of the things that you're like, this was not right? You said we weren't prepping them for the unknowns, the job, the boss, all these nuances. Or are there anything else there?
I think it just boiled down to the fact that it was a 20% confidence that
Mm.
we were giving. And I
Mm.
didn't know what the other 80% was, but I wanted to go and understand that, to get a full
Oh,
view of what is the 100%. And I was still on that mission of, how do we get people into the right jobs, to have the right experiences, to unlock their potential, to help them have meaningful work moments, right? I mean, that's kind of what the mission was at that point in time. And so to fulfill that, it just came to a natural evolution of, I need to take it from this 20% story, and I need to switch it into, I need to understand fully this whole recruiting process end to end, so I can understand where things could be changed, or just cut my teeth in there and see what's going
yeah.
on.
Hey, so it's now take me on that practical journey. That beautiful framing and insight, though. By the way, thank you. So, what are you discovering? Take me on that journey. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I had a few different corporate jobs. I spent most of my time, I worked for a tech company for a while, which was quite cool.
Uh huh.
It was very innovative in the sense that, we worked from home and we worked in jeans, and I was like, wow, this is cool. This is exactly how I imagined the future of work. Then I went to work for a very traditional healthcare company where it was not like that at all. So it was just felt like the wrong progression
Right. You went
of that
backwards
path.
maybe a little bit.
But but that's fine. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I remember this day where I was working with my new manager at the healthcare company because at this point I've skipped a big part here. At this
Oh
point,
no, you can't yeah, don't skip a huge part. Maybe give me a little insight of that big part.
so somewhere between me leaving occupational psychology space and going into corporate recruitment, I moved from Melbourne to London. So now I'm living in London.
You went to London. So what was that? What happened there?
So my now husband, then partner, was asked to move. And so in
Mhm.
typical gypsy style, I'm a gypsy, that's what I call myself, international citizen, a nomad.
Nice. Nice.
We just packed up. It was supposed to be for a year. We packed up everything, including the Tupperware containers and anything else you can dream of. And that was 18 years ago. So we haven't made it. We haven't made it back. I'm now in a third country where I'm living, so we
Yeah.
can get to that at some point. But at this
Yeah.
point, I'm in London. Yeah, so had that experience working for a tech company, very cool. I cut my teeth in recruiting. I had all sorts of experiences, very operational.
You're good.
We're good?
Yeah, I'll just mark that clip. Yeah, it froze a little bit, but go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so in London, in London, very operational, learned a lot in that role. Realized I probably wanted to be in a more strategic, sort of program driven position, but and then life moved us to Switzerland. So I spent 11 years living in Switzerland, worked for a healthcare company there. And I think the big learning, so not to kind of just, I had an amazing journey. I worked for a big healthcare organization who was headquartered out of Chicago, and got to a point where, yeah, I had my first two kids. I had two kids under two. I was working in quite a senior position by that point. I was traveling a lot, seeing a lot. I think yeah, I mean, that was quite a tough moment looking back. So I think,
The change. It's the what is the insight for people that are in that thick of it right now?
yeah, it
It's
was
because
weird
there's
for me.
millions of people in what you just described.
Yeah, it was interesting because I feel like I've always been, and maybe this is what we're both learning about me through this conversation. Work has always been very much part of my life, this
Mhm.
purpose, and it kind of fuels me every day. It's very much within my DNA. Um,
Mhm.
so it was a very surreal experience to be working in quite a busy senior position, to be pregnant, and then you go off on maternity leave and no one needs you anymore.
Mm.
You mean no one needs me? I've got this giant job that I spend so many hours doing, and then suddenly no one needs me anymore. It was a very surreal experience. So I don't know. And
Interesting.
then I think women feel guilty when when they think about that, right? Like they feel that they should just be happy to be in that moment, and I don't know. So for me, it was a conflicting period because I didn't want to be completely cut off, and
Totally makes sense.
yeah. So
And
that was
what is your, because this brings up a massive thing, and we could talk about this in a little bit, which is you touched on something, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think it's actually, I posted about this a couple of days ago.
oh yeah.
The biggest pandemic that humans are about to hit in 5 years or less, it's not disease, it's loss of identity, because you are so wrapped up in how much money you make and what your job title is. Because it's a
Mm-hmm.
major part of your life. What are your thoughts on that? Because you kind of are touching on that in this moment in time. You're having this realization that
Yeah.
I've dumped so much time into this, but what are you saying? I came back and things are still going on, and you're struggled. You're forced to have this conversation. What are your thoughts around this?
Well, I think it's exactly what you just said. Like you tie your identity to where you spend your time, which I guess is why I've been so focused on this and my kind of mission in life. It needs to be meaningful, it needs to be purposeful. You spend so much time and energy doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to feel like, I don't know, like you can continue to, it becomes part of who you are, right? And then suddenly it's not who you are.
100%. 100%.
I think
And
other people juggle that okay. I found it difficult. I found it very difficult.
I don't. And so the reason why I think it's going to be such a problem is AI doesn't care about your title, or it works 24/7.
Mm.
It's eventually going to be smarter than you, more efficient than you. They don't have to pay you healthcare. They don't have to pay it healthcare, right? Like the inevitable path for white collar workers, the majority of white collar workers is you're in trouble, right? So I think how you described it is like, we have the opportunity, like you have now had the opportunity to think about that for a while. What worries me is it's going to be one day I am X, the next day is what the hell do I do? And that's a different situation, right?
And that fast forwards me to what I think is happening now. And you asked me about the future of work and how this all stitches together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I look back at these just situations we've had over the last 18 months of these mass layoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and how damaging that is for people's confidence.
So damaging.
Just, I don't care about the brand of the company. I mean, that's bad luck for you guys, but people's confidence, what that does to their personal situation. And so, and it's really weird. I wrote about this in 2019 before anything kind of was going this direction, because I could just feel, based on human behavior and patterns in the workforce, that this was going to happen. This is why people are building portfolio careers. This is why people are going into the fractional space. This is why people are not signing up to drink the Kool-Aid. They want to do 10 things, and so they should. And AI actually gives us the opportunity to do that in different ways. So I think in 10 years or less, I'm speaking to you before about how timelines, it's impossible to predict timelines at the moment, I think.
10
But
years, 10 years is 100 years right now in
yeah,
my mind.
so maybe next year.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
next year.
Maybe next year.
I don't think people are going to have full-time contracts. I don't think people are going to sign up for jobs. I think people are going to be invited into opportunities because it matches what they want to do, the environment in which they can do their best work, what they're energized about, and it'll be structured around outcomes for sure, and tasks that need to be delivered. But people will have 8, 10, 15 different things that they're doing in different ways. And I'm not sure if I'm right, but I would love to see that, because I think that would be the definition of mission complete.
Well, I'll give you some hope. I have a full-time day corporate job, right? Corporate America has been tough for me, always has. It's evolved me into the human being I am, for sure. But the organizational structure, the politics, all of those things, it's just one of the most infuriating things I've ever witnessed and been through. And I've managed teams, I've managed massive budgets, right? And I specifically, and this is to your point, where my life really changed was, well, one, I went through my mental health crisis and almost died. That obviously is a redefining moment.
Yes.
But what it forced me to do, and I didn't know I was doing this at the time, was like, when you're trying to survive second to second, you're like, okay, I probably can't be senior management at a Silicon Valley startup in downtown San Francisco. That's the first thing that needs to change. So I go to, let's go back to what's familiar, which was insurance at the time and creative. So I go to get like a sole contributor project manager role, right? That immediately frees up 70 hours a week. Now I'm better. Now I can do my job in very little time, and it allows me to start creating the freedom. This podcast is a product of that, right? And so it gave me the time and the flexibility to truly explore who I am, what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And now that has evolved into multiple podcasts, helping my buddy do his startup, still having the full-time job, still having a family. And it is all available because of AI, right? I was able in 15 minutes or less to use Claude, Perplexity, and Gemini, say, do the latest research on startup investor pitch decks, talk about AI safety and governance, look at what the pain points are, and give me the relevant articles.
Mm-hmm.
That would have taken a consulting firm at least a week with multiple people
For sure.
getting that together, right?
Yep.
I did that myself in less than 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I have the knowledge of what I'm looking for, and I understand how to prompt, and I understand I have a defined task. I am a product of what you said. So I just wanted to give you that personal story that I do think we're actually already here. And I actually think I'll one up what you said. If you do not start thinking this way, the world of have and have nots will start forming, and you're going to be on the wrong side of the equation,
For
unfortunately.
sure. I mean, I think this mantra of AI taking jobs is, I just don't subscribe to it at all. I think what AI has the ability to do is to take away some of the activity that probably, frankly, none of us wanted to do or like doing
No.
or brought out the best in us.
Yeah.
And so we can all elevate. I mean, I draw this parallel to when the ATM came out and everyone went, well, all the bank branches are going to close. But what happened was the bank branches became sort of more this human connection place, right? So
Yep.
relationship driven.
Yep.
I think it's a terrible parallel, but it's exactly what's going to happen here. We'll take away some of that foundational, mundane, transactional things, but we can all elevate and diversify and build resilience into our career as opposed to these life defining moments where we have a job and then we don't have a job. And it's just, we don't have to, that's not the future. That's not the way we have to go forward here. So, but I agree, you have to get on the right side of it. And
Because
get it.
but it also goes back to your thing of purpose, right? You got to start understanding who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And what drives you, why you think you're here on this planet. I know you and I have talked about for each other why we think we're on this planet. I assume most people sort of think through that, right? It's just getting into the details of it and sort of being able to
So
verbalize it.
here's my actually argument, a little bit of pushback on this. I actually think, and this is again why this pandemic in my mind is happening, I think majority of humans never have that conversation. What is your thought? The deep, meaningful conversation. The like Hollywood moment of like looking in the mirror and saying like, oh, I am not the way I am because of everything else. It's me, and I need to start having that conversation.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think a lot of people get caught in the rat trap and the cycle, and they almost don't have time to sit back and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It requires some space. Sometimes it requires a life defining, changing moment. Um, but it would be nice if people could give themselves the space to think it through, because I think there is absolutely ways to work through that and sort of figure out what's your mojo, where do you have your flow. It doesn't have to be life changing or groundbreaking, but I absolutely believe that people know what brings out the best in them.
Yep.
um
I think that the reason why people ultimately don't have it is I do think it's one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing you'll ever do, right?
mhm.
Because you have to get real deep, raw, exposed. To your point, I probably would have never had it if my life wasn't forced in my hand. And why I think, and I remember when we first talked, I was like, she is my people, because our missions are aligned in the sense that we want to help people do that, and we know how important it is. And I think me and you, with the convergence of AI in our mindsets, we're less than 1% in the world. And so kind of like my second mission, I told you my mission was just to have human conversations like this, which exceeded all my expectations already up till now, and we still need to hit chapter 3.
Well, I've got a good segue into chapter 3 if you're ready to get there. But
yeah, I'm ready to get there. But the point that I was going to make is the secondary mission. And I think you've come to this realization. I want your input on this too. Is once I started talking to more tech AI entrepreneurs and founders, I was like, oh my God, like now I have this other responsibility to help people look on the good side of the things, right? And that, like, how do you get to the good side of the things and not be that have not? And I think it's about education, informing, hope, and just talking openly about mindsets and things that need to change. And we're doing this right now. So
yeah, for sure.
I wanted to thank you for that as well, too. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think there's been
Segue as well. Go for it.
I mean, now I'm kind of jumping forward a bit, I guess, but my life then led into, so long story short, I got to 2019 and that whole thing I was trying to figure out in the corporate world, I got to kind of, I feel like as far as I could go from a role perspective, as far up the ladder. And I went, oh, it's still not figured out here either.
Right. Right.
I left to, and I wasn't sure. And it's so interesting when you look back on things. I remember I left, and people were like, "You're crazy. You're leaving. Where are you going?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm going to go and do something else. Maybe I'm going to do it on my own. It doesn't feel like I'm supposed to be here now." And I remember writing loads. I was writing about stuff all the time in terms of kind of visualizing what this could be that I wanted to do that would have the impact that I sort of always imagined. And it's really interesting looking back on that now because there's so many themes of what I was talking about back in 2019 that I'm starting to see play out now in what I'm doing and working towards, but also the journey that I've been on in the last sort of 7 years. So yes, my segue is I mean, there's been a lot of different things that I've done over the last 7 years, but what I'm doing right now is I'm in literally the final weeks of a technology build. It's an AI technology connecting experts, like knowledge workers, experts in lots of different domains, into companies building with AI so that we can build better AI, basically. So being able to give people, and these are kind of freelance opportunities, right? So talking about giving people a different revenue channel, being able to apply their knowledge into AI, being able to understand how AI works, kind of be at one with it. So it's all those sort of things that we've been talking about have come together in this technology.
Yeah, and it is such a critical thing that needs to happen. I work for a massive organization, and it's just mind blowing to me how disconnected people, like, they think they're like, oh yeah, I know ChatGPT and I use it as a Google search basically. I'm like, if you guys do not realize what is happening right now, it's insane, right? And here's why I think what you're doing is so critically important. This is my proof point that I literally am living right now. I am working with some outside companies. We've created AI agents. They are better than humans at tasks right now. I have the data. I'm showing it to people, and I still get responses of, "Is that right?" Like they don't believe it, and I'm like, I don't know what else I need to say or do to tell you that this happened yesterday. And by the way, every not month now, every day that goes by, there is a better technology. And I firmly believe by the end of this year, we're like 100xing where we are now. And so, but the majority of the people I talk to, it's either fear or they just don't want to be bothered with it. Like, it's the resistance to change. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there is an element of fear. I think there's an element of this is a bubble and it'll burst. I think people haven't come to grips with actually the pendulum is maybe a little bit out here and maybe it's going to come back a little bit in the middle, but it's not going away. It's not changing. And so to your point earlier, you have to be on the right side of this, I think, to be able to move forward. I think ignoring that it exists or not exploring what it's about is going to be detrimental. And I think that's part of the future, and that's part of what we're building, because we're wanting to, on the one side, be able to sort of extract that knowledge of experts in the insurance industry, financial services, medical, whatever it might be, so that we can allow those AI companies that are building in that space to build better AI, so we can all kind of elevate from there. But
Yes.
also give people an opportunity to have a different income channel, which is not the main part, but also be able to understand what AI is, how it learns, how it moves forward, how it thinks. So there's a lot of angles to it that I guess what I'm trying to say is links back to some of the different themes that we've covered today.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you said something really interesting to me, which was in 2019, you started writing and you just couldn't stop writing. And I'm assuming you were writing about the next 5 years and what the future has unfold. What do you think you got right so far, and what do you think you got wrong?
So I will totally send this to you, because it was a blog that I did for my new corporate my consulting website, because apparently that's what you do when you set up a website, you do a blog. And so
Which, by the way, are huge now because GEO and all this stuff is looking for dense, rich information, right?
Right. So I'd never written anything like it before. It was like a manifesto of what am I going to do in this new consulting business that I'm setting up. So it was just this 2-page type thing that existed on my website. I'm not even sure if anyone read it, but it was things like, we've just got it all upside down. We look at people in terms of their past performance. We're looking at them through a rear view mirror. Why aren't we looking, why aren't we assessing people based on what they can do in the future? Why do we have a skills-based approach where we have these taxonomies and what's the gap? And we sort of have this top-down approach to everything from a corporate standpoint, as opposed to who are these people and where can we deploy them to get the best outputs, because that's good for them and it's going to be good for you too. So there was that tone to it. There was a tone of this sort of gig work economy, which I guess plays into this fractional space that we're talking about, being able to allow people to work from anywhere. So we've seen the massive rise of all these, remote working companies that can set your employees up from anywhere. Obviously, COVID, which I had no idea about at the time, accelerated all of that.
Yes.
So those were the main themes. But the thing I remember distinctly was I said, I know nothing about building technology. I've worked in corporate. I think this is a consulting business. But if I'm being honest with myself, if I want to achieve all of this, the only way I'm ever going to be able to do it is through a technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I've got no idea how I'm going to build a technology or what that even, at the time, you'd have to have millions of dollars to build a technology. I was like, that doesn't seem possible. So now all of these things have kind of come together in a way, and we're weeks away from launching.
What is your thought on, because of the conversions of the technology, it's literally folding in on itself at this moment in time. Like there's in the narrative, and I actually thought about this a while ago, as like, we're not in a not too distant future, I will be able to probably not even write a super even detailed paragraph in one shot, easy, simple prompt, an entire product app, and it will just work, right? That power, I also feel limitless, right? Like I hated coding, but now I don't need to worry about that. I can just create it. I've always been a creative guy. Are the companies of the future that are AI native from the ground up 10 people or less, 20 people or less? What do they look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the AI native companies of the future will be very lean. I think the difference between the ones that will succeed and the ones that don't is the level of human expertise that trains whatever that AI native company is trying to do, right? So if you're an insurance AI company, you better have the best insurance people training your model, or it's not going to work.
Right.
So this is where the whole sort of fractional thing comes into play. I think the whole workforce is going to look so different.
Yeah. And what does that? Let's just paint in your. It doesn't have to be vivid. But what does that look like 10 years from now?
10 years from now.
Well, 5 years. Let's do 5 years. That by 2030, that's a big date that everybody throws around. By 2030, what does work look like to you?
So there's no giant corporate companies. I think this concept of the Fortune 1000, I don't know. Maybe we don't even talk about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think we don't have people signing up for full-time permanent jobs. I think everyone's kind of on different things. They're pulled into different opportunities based on particular outcomes, and it's all synced into not just skills that you have, but what are you excited about and what kind of environment can you do your best work in. And I think, it's about people being able to choose where they spend their time, how they spend it, having different things that they get to do. I know that there would be different people with different theories of what it all looks like in 5 years, and AI has taken over everything to the point where we don't have anything to do. But
there's no right or wrong answer here. But I'm interested in yours, and I think you did paint a beautiful picture. And I think the other thing that kind of, and you said it, but with that not directly saying it, which is, and it was a theme we've talked about for the last 5-10 minutes, is the ironic part about all of that, which I think it's going that way too, is it does actually put humans back at the center of it. Because I think, to your points, you're not going to be able to be successful if you don't have the right humans in that AI equation.
Yeah, and I think this human in the loop concept is not just a buzzword. I actually genuinely cannot wrap my head around AI getting to the point where of these human traits that we have around empathy and complex problem solving, and I don't know what you call judgment. It's the in-between stuff, and maybe it will get there. But I feel like there's always going to be an aspect of that. It's almost like just reading the energy in the room. I don't know how AI is going to read the energy in the room.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the argument that I do kind of believe in to get to is when we're talking about, again, it's going to have to go back to, I think, the whole industry or services that the human-centered AI companies provide are human-centric interaction things. But if you talk about a pure product, there will be a point in the not too distant future where empathy really doesn't matter, because and there's this great book, I don't know, this guy Emad, it's called The Last Economy. And his whole theory is, it came out, highly recommended you read it. It came out last August, and his whole theory was like, hey, we have 1,000 days left.
1,000.
1,000 days, which is basically the equivalent of 3 years, right? Give or take 100 days over or under, but that is his estimation. And at that moment in time.
Are we at the beginning of that? Just out of curiosity.
What's up?
Are we at the beginning of that 3-year period, or?
So August started. The book came out in August. So from August, yes, we are at the beginning of it.
Okay.
And he makes this point, which I actually do think is reality. And this is where the human out of the loop and the debate starts, is where do we go? Which is, he uses it's like a surfboard company or something like this, right? At this moment in time, and by the way, Elon Musk has already done this. Like one of the podcasts that I listened to, they're literally like, I went to the Gigafactory in Texas. There is a pile of aluminum that gets melted down, and a half hour later, out comes a Tesla. No human in the loop, right? Like, that exists right now. And so you get into this, they call it the inner loop, which is like the energy, the AI, and the robots produce things without any human. And we're basically there already. So you take that example of the surfboard company, and the research is done autonomously. it seems that, let's say in South America, there's an opportunity for this type of surfboard because of this culture, whatever it may be. Marketing's done autonomously, product design autonomously, production autonomously, logistics autonomously. Really, the only human left in that loop at that moment in time is the CEO. And at one moment in time, that's going to fold in and it's on itself because the AI is going to be like, why am I waiting for a human for a decision? I already have the decision. And that happens. And so I think then that turns into the question of, so then what industries are humans relevant at that point? Because for physical products like that,
I think, yeah.
Tesla being an example, we don't need humans anymore.
No, I agree. I think the manufacturing space is for sure somewhere that could be automated completely. I think it's other areas where, I don't know. I mean, who knows? We never would have thought that we were here with AI at this point if we circle back 8 months, right? I just can't imagine a world where there isn't some need for the human qualities that we have in order to advance even some of those industries further forward. I feel like if we don't have that element of unique kind of input and thinking, then it's going to become static, right? It's going to kind of
It will for sure. And I think I agree with you that like the human centered ones will be the ones that survive because like, but not only that, I think AI will survive too, because think about the percentage of people that just want, I don't know, something good enough.
Mm.
And do I care if a human's at the back of my, I don't know, name insert product here? No, but are there things that I want a human element in touch? Yes. And so I think it's really just to your point earlier, it's just this shift in industry and then what are humans good at? And then how do they build businesses, products, and services around that? And it's a complete paradigm shift, like totally changing everything. I'm with you. There's just no, and I saw it. I saw it a couple of days ago, and I thought to myself, this is the beginning of the end of insurance, which is there's a Silicon Valley startup, it's like AI super agent or something, and they finally like got the regularization, like soup to nuts can get an insurance quote, no human in the loop, right? Give that a year, and so like, what is the insurance agent at that moment in time? In addition to the conversions of robo taxis, right? So now you have a world here in the future where I don't even need to own a car. I just walk out my door and my robotaxi's there because it's already connected to everything that it knows that I want to do. And it's some absurd number, like, I mean, multiple cars for every household in America, and 95% of the time they just sit in your driveway. Like the amount of waste on automobiles is insane.
Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity for efficiency with all of yeah.
So this has been just such an enlightening, beautiful conversation.
Covered some global
I want to make sure, do you have a couple, like 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So what I want to do is we've kind of like skirted around chapter 3, but I want to get very concise to say, okay, you're a company, elevator pitch, 2 minutes or less. What are you doing? What problem are you solving?
So we are connecting domain. So we think about a domain expert as someone who's an expert in their field, whether it be insurance, financial services, legal, connecting them into companies building AI. That is chapter 1 of what we're doing. But what we're doing it in a different, so that is the point of our technology. We're connecting domain experts into companies building AI. And we're doing that because it will build better AI with expertise training the models. We're doing that in different ways, which circles back to my mission, my larger mission. So we're looking at people's, not only their skills and experience that they bring in to the work, but also how aligned they are to the work that they need to do. So whether that's in a sort of fractional capacity or a permanent capacity, and also their interest in doing that type of work. So it's a different way of evaluating people as well into those opportunities.
And so is your company though doing the actual hiring, doing the AI pattern matching? Like what is the actual output of that technology? I'm
Yeah.
getting a job through your platform, you're my recruiter. What does that look like?
Yeah. So you would, let's say, you're looking for this type of work. You would come into our platform, you'd apply. There's an AI driven process that you would go through to talk about your experiences, and then you'd be matched into opportunities to actually work in a fractional or permanent capacity with those companies that are building AI. So we're basically the platform connecting people into the opportunities.
Beautiful. I think it's a brilliant move. So what does today look like? What are you currently working on? What gets you very excited?
We are final testing of the technology that we have. I mean, I've had so one thing to say, I've had so many chapters of what I'm doing in my business. You know, I started in consulting. I went into selling other people's technologies. I went into advising on technology. I then commercialized some of those technologies that I was advising upon. And then I went, okay, now it's time to build. And we're building into the space of connecting experts into AI companies because this is where the growth is happening right now. The next chapters of this technology are going to be in many different forms and industries. I mean, for me, the important part that is that at the heart of this technology is the ability not to just think of people in terms of their past experiences, but where can they do their best work and what are they excited about?
Mm-hmm.
So today we are bug fixing. We are getting ready to get our MVP out to market. And I'm excited about that because I actually think, you know, there's been many roads to go down, and I think this is where it's going to be at. I think I'm actually at the start point of the chapter I've been trying to build.
Beautiful. And I cannot wait to figure out how I can help you because I believe in the mission. I think we've got a lot of similarities in brands and purposes. So
Yeah.
I always say it's one of my favorite parts about also a byproduct of this is just the relationships that I've built and learning together over time and failing together over time.
Okay.
What is the next so we'll do this next 3 to 6 months, what excites you now that you're going to start your chapter? I'll ask you one final question that I ask everybody that comes onto the podcast. I'll give you my final thoughts and then we'll call it a day. Give me the next 3 to 6 months on obviously you're launching the product. Then what gets you excited?
So in 3 to 6 months, we would have proven out the concept. So I think in 6 months will be a very exciting, important time because that's when we start to actually expand what we're doing. I think naturally the first 3 to 6 months will be pretty heavy lifting, a lot of grunt work, um, a lot of uncertainty of what's going on, a lot of nervousness around have we done it right? Are we doing it the right way? And I think in 6 months we'll know where we are. And so I'm excited to get to that point because it feels like a more mature chapter of this, right?
Yeah. I have, and if you don't have to share specific details, but I think this is interesting and would be super beneficial to anybody that listened to this. Someone at your moment in time, how do you think about acquiring customers and like go to market? Is it LinkedIn? Are you doubling down on your probably vast network that you have? Is it traditional marketing? How do you think about that exposure and MVP and getting customers and getting feedback?
I think like always there's such a relevant relationship angle to this. So my business partner and I have the benefit of lots of years behind
Mhm,
us and
mhm.
relationships that we've built. And so that's incredibly important. We've got an amazing advisory board as well. I mean, they just bring so much connection and insight to us. And I think it's really important to get the right people around that type of table early. And then, and this is very specific to what we're doing. I mean, we are trying to build a new category of work for people. And as a result, it's really about quite high volume marketing so that we can get the message out to a lot of people to say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to understand AI, to contribute your knowledge to AI. You can do it outside of your normal job hours. Are you interested? Come in and apply. I mean, that's our marketing plan.
Yeah.
To start with, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty straightforward, which is not the case for everyone. The challenge for us is we have a marketplace here, right? So we can bring the experts in, and then we also need to make sure that we've got the demand. So we're balancing the two things at the same time, but that's where the relationship aspect comes in.
Right. And so I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, traditional marketing probably makes more sense for the talent acquisition side, and then but those higher meaningful relationship is like the platform demand side, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's where it'd be more high touch, more targeted. Whereas the supply side, we need to go out wide.
What would you say, kind of the final to wrap up your chapter 3, any final thoughts, or what would you say to potential customers, AI curious people about what you're building, and any other thoughts?
I think, I've always been sort of candidate first on everything. So, our website is very much geared in that direction. Our messaging is very much geared in that direction. I think it'd be for people to, think about, if I'm talking specifically about this business, about thinking about this as an opportunity to contribute to AI, to the systems of tomorrow, to learn more about, what is happening within some of these models, and to create more opportunity and sort of open up your career in a more diverse way. So I think I've always been treading into a path that feels unfamiliar to people, and I think I'm doing it again. I think I've done that my whole sort of career. I've always been on the edge of things that people can't quite connect with. So I think if there's any call to action here, it would be open to something that probably doesn't look like something you've seen before, which is this weird freelance opportunity to, work 5 or 15 hours and get paid to contribute some of your knowledge into the AI systems of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Be open to it.
Yeah. I'm going to give you some of my experiences, brand marketing background. I'm giving you this free tidbit, but I think you just wrote your own slogan, which is your marketplace of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you built. That's what you're building. Put
Yeah.
that in some of your verbiage. That's interesting to me. I want to check out what the marketplace of opportunity is. That sounds cool.
I like it.
But
write that one down.
Yeah, jot that one down. Turn that into
free advice. Free marketing advice.
Free marketing advice. See, I'm fractionalizing already here. I want to ask you the last question, but it's been such a beautiful journey. I knew it was going to be great. And my last question is, if someone were to, that come on the podcast as a follow-up or ask you what it was like to be on the Mikey G podcast experience, what would you say?
I think it's been a journey. I think I've had 3 or 4 quite meaningful insights. So it's kind of like a free therapy session as well. That's how I'd almost describe it.
It's a free
I think in all my years of recruiting, we all have to admit that it's quite nice to sit back and reflect and talk about experiences. And, that was always the fun part of interviewing candidates for me, where you see where they light up on things and you start to learn things about them, that's the things that they don't say sometimes. But we don't always give ourselves the opportunity to sit back and reflect and think about what we've done.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important because life gets tough sometimes and we lose sight of who we are and what we're doing. And especially as an entrepreneur, you're like, what am I doing here? I'm building something. I don't know if it's going to work. It takes all my time, sometimes my time away from my family. It's all sorts of stuff. So it's tough.
Yeah.
So we need to look after ourselves.
Well, your response was exactly what I was going for. So I've accomplished my goal here because,
well done.
So sorry, go ahead.
I said, excellent work.
Thank you. Yeah, if I reflect back on it, it was just, there were so many beautiful insights. But it started with you know what I got immediately? I was like, you are amazing at uh, painting pictures and um, describing things, because I, as a creative individual, immediately went into Tasmania, and I was like, I'm on the farm with her. We're shoveling poo to get the CD player,
Yeah, well, yeah.
and I think you just did a beautiful job of kind of telling your story. And yeah, we went off in tangents, but overall in the themes. And I think for somebody like you that's so good at doing it and has so much robust experience, we didn't do you a service in the sense that we could literally have 4 to 5 more podcasts. We did lots of jumps and leaps. Um, but you were very thoughtful about it. And then my favorite are, I do have some people that have been on this podcast, guests, that it seems like the nerves never go, and they're really hop to, like, they just want to answer my questions.
Mhm.
Uh, but you constantly were like, you were literally physically like leaning back in your chair, and you're like, let me think about that. And that
Because we're at
meant
the
a lot to
we're
me.
at campsite, no? With
Yeah. Yeah. But
cocktails
it
at
meant a lot
campfire.
to me that you thought deeply too, because I think people just do not. There's this superficial understanding of what it means to think deeply and listen, which is like, oh, if I look at your eyes, I'm listening. It's like, no, really sit on it. And I think the other thing that, um, and this has been a big learning experience for me over this, is I don't think you can think deeply without having a multitude of experiences and insights from multitudes of people. And that's actually been the byproduct of how I can think differently, because now I have yet a new story from somebody like yourself in Tasmania. Like years ago, not in my wildest dreams, but I'd be thinking that I would just have, I mean, we talked for 2 hours, a 2 hour conversation
We
from
do, yeah.
somebody from Tasmania that I didn't really even know exist. I heard of it, had no clue where it was on the map. And then we had this beautiful, insightful cast. The other thing that stood out, I loved the conversation about you knocking on the doors, the boarding school, and this constant, like, just grit and insight. And then you being vulnerable enough to talk about your dad and all of these different things that, like, it made a meaningful impact. And we didn't even get to go deep on, but I could tell that, like, that whole transition of moving and being a high executive and handling a family, like, you just show vulnerability. And I think, honestly, out of anything that anybody does on this podcast, uh, you being able to do that, that is the biggest gift to me, and that is not lost on me. So just thank you for being you as a human being, because you were truly authentic. And I think that what we did today, in addition with the marketplace of opportunity that you're creating, are the only couple things that we have left and we need to do. And you are on this earth for and doing the things that I think you're meant to do. And I could tell that through just a 2 hour conversation. Thank you again, too, also for your entrepreneurship. You're an entrepreneur, your mother, you have this crazy world on, and you just gave me 2 hours. That is the most valuable thing anybody in your position has. And you just gave me 2 hours of your time. Thank you so much. Like I said, you have a new friend. I think we have a lot of similar synergies. I'd love to set up a follow-up call so we can figure out how we can start cooking. I'll let you launch your company. You know, you can do those small little things first. But we're going to link up, and let's just keep on continuing, learning, growing, failing together. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're very welcome, and thank you. I mean, the only reason we had that kind of conversation is because you create that kind of space. So
Thank you.
thank you as well, and keep doing it.
Well, I will not stop. I'm going to
All
do this
right.
for the rest of my life, whether I am making money or not.
Let's keep our mission going, right?
100%. We're gonna figure out how to, because you're recruiting. Like, I already have many ideas. Here's one idea. Or you're coming with tons of talent. You easily can define people that would be a great fit for this podcast. And now you want to talk about marketplace opportunity, here's yet another opportunity to come on Mikey G podcast and maybe talk about things that you never had before, create some marketing content that you just can't create anywhere else. ChatGPT isn't going to give you the shoveling crap for a CD player moment in time, right? Like that just doesn't come out. Yeah. This is the human stuff that gets me so excited.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And with that being said, Mikey G and Tess are out.